Welcome to another episode of One More Round. We're glad to be here. This is Lucas Slankard and Ben Witter with Crosshairs Marketing. And we're just excited to spend a few minutes today visiting with Anatole from Club Capital. So
just to recap kind of where we've come up to this point, we spent the first quarter of the year talking all about team, about building culture, about hiring, about coaching and development. And then we took a month down at the Texas Leaders Forum. And when we came back from the forum, there was so much good information, so many great vendors, so many great agents that shared from stage that we kind of brainstormed around that and just said, let's dive into some of those topics and go one-on-one with some of those things. So we had the privilege of being a booth set up right next door to Anatole and Club Capital down at the Leaders Forum. So we got to know them a little bit and just really thought that what they bring to the table for agents is really valuable. And so we wanted to connect with him and bring him into the conversation. So Anatole, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. And why don't you just share a little bit about, yourself, kind of your background and your story and what led to Club Capital and who they are.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ben and Lucas. It was great getting to meet you all down in Texas. Amazing conference as usual. It is every year. And it's kind of serendipitous how we got put next to each other, right? And now we're talking today. So the longer I'm in the insurance world, the more that I see those kind of serendipitous moments happen. So really cool there and really appreciate you having me on. So at Club Capital, I'm the vice president of the Allstate business development side. So what does that mean? Work with all of our clients and folks who are thinking about coming on to Club Capital and work with them to find their fit, to make sure they're getting good service. Basically, if you're an Allstate agent, just give me a call, whether you're a client or a prospect. So that's my role at Club Capital. A little bit more about myself. It's funny, I did not come from an insurance background. I didn't actually come from a finance background either. I was in software sales for over a decade for most of my career, doing a lot with real estate on the side as well. And I had known our CEO, Micah Cannon, for quite some time, about 5 years. He lives right at 5 minutes down the road from me. His wife and my wife actually grew up together. And so we, just had dinners together, been friends. And so he'd been kind of just continually asking, hey, you want to come over to Club Capital, come check out what we're doing. And after a decade in the software space, it was just not fun for me getting selling to Fortune 100 companies. You don't see the impact that you get to make when you're working with small business owners. And so for the past 2 years now, I've been with Club Capital. It's been really cool to get to see the impact and changes that these insurance agents have made with working with our team on the finance side. So that's a little bit about my background. I've always kind of been a numbers nerd, especially when looking at real estate deals and stuff. So when Mike and I first had those conversations, we looked at the similarity between real estate and insurance, right? They're both recurring revenue and you can grow your businesses kind of similarly, I guess. And so it all started to click and make sense. And so that's a little bit about my background. I nerd out over the numbers. I nerd out over where you can find efficiencies. And just been really exciting to be here for the past 2 years.
That's awesome. As we dive into this, like Lucas and I are obviously agents first. Crosshairs was really born out of trying to do direct mail and marketing for our own agencies. So we thought we might just kind of start by sharing a little bit more about our agent journey. So Lucas, if you want to kind of kick off with kind of your journey as an agency owner.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's exciting. And we saw your presentation, or at least I guess Ben and I were together. We went out to, I think it was the Midwest Forum, not this past year, but the year before. And I was just kind of floored by some of the ideas and just the stuff that, insights you shared. And so I'm excited about just visiting with you and the things we can learn, about our own businesses. As Ben mentioned, we've both been with Allstate quite a while. I've been with Allstate now about 20 years. I started as a scratch agent back in 2006. So I think it was September of 2006. So yeah, almost 20 years. I did take a break in there. I sold my agency and went on the corporate side. I was an FSL, which is basically a market leader. we've changed the acronyms 100 times in those 20 years. But I did that for 8 years, and that was really eye-opening to get to work with agents of all different sizes. And I had grown as a scratch agent, but I'd never worked with agents that had big books. And so it was just really neat to have them kind of open their, businesses and share. And I learned a lot in those 8 years, and then bought a book in March of 2020. So yeah, COVID, I bought the agency.
Now, Lucas, did you buy it before COVID hit or like right after? Because March 2020, that was prime
Yeah.
time.
So the process takes a while, as everybody
Yeah.
knows. So we were well on our way, and the closing was March 1st.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
March 14th, I was having to show my team how to pack, how to set up their computers at their house.
Yep.
We
Remote.
didn't have laptops, and we weren't really, I just inherited what the other agent had as far as computers. And yeah, I was setting up desktops on top of their, I unplugged everything, set it up on the desk, and said, okay, plug it back in. And we had to have a lesson, and then we did some, phone calls and got everybody going. And
Wow.
I mean, as everybody knows, it was a crazy time, but it gave me a chance then to, kind of revamp the office, and we went to laptops, and now, people can work remote. It just, some of the learnings from that were great. That first 6 months to a year, it was just trying to stay alive, but yeah. And then Ben and I connected, and we were friends. I was his FSL at one point, but we were also friends, and we connected about starting to do some direct mail, and that's really what, he's, like he said, Crosshairs grew from that. And we both have had, we started, 2022 is really when that started, that journey.
Yep.
And every year since, we've had record year after record year of growth. So
Amazing.
it's been great. So happy to be back on the agent side, but really, I learned a lot on the FSL side. So it was invaluable that time I spent there.
Lucas, what drew you back to the agent side after being an FSL for a while? I mean, 8 years is not a while. 8 years is a pretty long time.
Right.
So what drew you back?
It goes by quick. I mean, it's been 5 years now since I've been back on the agent side. It's hard to believe. I always wanted to be back on the agent side. But we were having kids, and we needed some benefits, and we needed some things. And at the time, the opportunity to go on the corporate side presented itself, and I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
But always kind of had that deal. And then my mentor from the region had bought an agency with kind of a short-term exit plan, and he had said, I want to do this for about 3 years, and when I'm ready to retire, do you want to buy my agency? And so we kind of had just a handshake agreement.
Cool.
And so he actually decided a little bit earlier than 3 years. He said, I'm ready. And I said, I'm ready too. And, I was ready to, I don't know if I'd have made it another 2 years. And actually, that's right when all the changes happened in the regions. They collapsed the regions. I didn't know any of that was coming, but that happened just shortly after I opened.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of change.
Got out at a good time.
Yep.
Yeah, my journey was a little bit different. I came from the restaurant industry. Like most, agents, I've still never met anyone that grew up saying, I want to be an insurance agent. Like, it just doesn't exist. You stumble your way into it one way or the other. And if it's not for you, you work your way out quickly. And if it's for you, you realize it's an amazing career opportunity, and just a really fun industry to be in. But I was basically looking for a 9-to-5 job to get me out of the restaurant. So I went to work as a LSP in an agency, and I sold for 5 years. So that was 2011 to 2016. And then I bought a small book, it was $1.4 million book, December of 2016.
Wow.
And from there we grew slow. It took a while to get up and off the ground. Just didn't have the capital to invest and really, increase and accelerate the growth. But we were able to grow from 1.5 to about 3.5 in the first 3 years. We were able to acquire a small $1 million book that put us up just shy of 5. That was January 1st of 23. And then that was right when we were getting, I had been doing direct mail with some other vendors for a couple years, ran into some snags, and had just connected with Lucas and said, hey man, I love mail. I believe in mail, but I'm going to figure out how to do it in-house. Do you want to go on the journey with me? And that's how Crosshairs started. And we initially did it just for our own agencies, really didn't have a picture of it turning into what it is. But it just started working so well. Part of it was us investing in equipment and machines, to where then it's like, man, if we could just help a few people just to offset some of this cost, that would be huge. And then it just started spreading. So yeah,
That's really cool. It's funny because I see some similarities with Club Capital, right? And what do they say? Necessity is the mother of all invention. And so one of our co-founders, one of Micah's friends is a agent, and he had the same problem. He was like, I can't find a good bookkeeper and accountant. So what they do, they started one. And so that was back in 2017, similar. And now we've grown, we've got over 900 agents across all carriers on the platform. So it's
that's
like,
awesome.
what just starts as this like kernel of, hey, let's try this. I can't find a good solution out there. Let's just do it. It's funny how that happens, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So, and I think that kind of leads into like really well of like getting to there's the agency journey is like, there are so many different phases to it. We're all at a different pace. We're all at a different phase. We all have different goals and objectives that we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
There was a time in my journey where it was like, stay afloat, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then it got to a point where it's like, okay, what if we can become profitable? And then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, what if we can scale growth, right? And so that's kind of the last couple of years have been a really fun time for us where, we've grown from that 5 million mark to the 8 million mark in the last just shy of 2.5 years.
It's amazing.
And so, yeah, we're really, I feel like the engine's just getting going, and we're then coming in to look at, what are the numbers behind agency growth, right? Like that's the whole point of what Club Capital does. And so I think for us, it's just like a really good time to say, hey, now that we're to a point where numbers are starting to get real, and there is some investable income or revenue, team becomes a massive part of that. The marketing plan becomes a massive part of that. What can we learn from where the numbers are and where the opportunities are? So I think it really ties in well with kind of diving into what you guys do.
And one thing that you said there that I really clung on to was, everybody's at a different part of their journey. Sometimes you're just hanging on. Sometimes you're trying to scale. Like that's when we did a report. It was actually, I think, the report that we shared at the Midwest Agent Forum a couple of years ago, where we've looked at all of our agents and looked at, okay, when we meet with them, are they focused on growth right now? Are they focused on profitability? What are they trying to do, right? Because an extreme growth agent, we found 3 buckets: extreme growth mindset, and profit first. And we found that when we analyze the data, your marketing spend and your like employee expenses is what we'll call it, hiring, paying your team, whatever you want to call it, drastically changes across that, which of course impacts your profit margins, right? So when we sit down with a client, we want to understand what is it that you're trying to do, because a forecast and a budget for someone in extreme growth mode who might be even okay with losing money on a monthly basis because they're trying to make it up in a bonus or trying to get to VC, whatever, would be extremely different than, someone who's been an agent for 30 years and is pretty content with just maximizing profit, right? So those are the 3 kind of buckets that we've identified, and I'm happy to actually share some numbers here as well. If you want, I can share my screen and just
for sure, that'd be awesome.
And I would be curious to hear from you guys too. Like, it sounds like you're kind of similar points in your agency, maybe a little different, but like, where would you fall if I asked you the question, like, hey, what's your overall goal right now? Is it growth? Is it profit? Like, how would you guys approach that question? Where would you say that you fit?
I would say growth. I think that I've said growth for all 8 years of our existence.
Yeah.
And I probably said it before it was realistic, like that was always my mindset if I have visions of scaling. But when you're as small as I started, it's just not reality. And so it was always my mindset and my target. But I think the more we've started to grow, the more I've really understood, like, we're just getting into growth mode.
Interesting.
So I think like more than ever, I'm in growth mode. Like I would say that extreme growth bucket that you had mentioned, like
Yeah.
that's for sure where I'm at. Like, the bigger you get, the more opportunity there is to get bigger. And so we're just starting to tap into that, and it excites the heck out of me.
And is
Yeah.
that a growth by acquisition or growth by organic? Both?
I think both, right? I think growth is growth, and
Yeah.
I believe in acquisition. I obviously have purchased a small book and then acquired a small one along the way. I think there's also times where marketing spend, and based off of the compensation structure, it is a better decision to grow organically right now.
Yep.
Again, if the right opportunity was in front of me, I would take it in a heartbeat for an acquisition
Sure.
as well. But I think now more than ever is the time to let the company fund your growth through organic spend.
Yeah. I mean, we're similar. I didn't mention size, but when I bought in 2020, it was about 4.5 million is what I bought. And the first 2 years stayed pretty flat. And then now just shy of 8. So
Wow.
really in the last 3 years, same kind of trajectory as Ben. We've really had similar growth results, which has been great. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm probably somewhere in between the extreme growth and the growth mindset as far as just the reality of, so I've got 2 kids, and one's getting ready to go to college. And so there's also this, like, I got to make sure that we're, that there is some money left over at the end of each month.
Right.
But, my desire is to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's, ultimate, I want to be in the extreme growth category. And that's kind of my vision. And kind of as Ben mentioned, it's just fun to watch, the numbers, they exponentially grow. And so, the company raises the goals every year, and then, we're so focused on that number. And then you look back and you go, oh, wow, we grew, by hitting those numbers and exceeding those numbers, it really works out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was fun to outright the book that I bought in a year, right? Like we just did that for the first time last year.
That's awesome.
And I think, my goal is in the next 3-4 years, I'd like to outright the book you bought in a year, like it's possible. Let's go.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm kind of with Ben, I'm in a spot where it's like, I want to put myself in the best position to capitalize on opportunities if they come up, if they become available.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not only growth, but just all of the other Allstate, pieces, that making sure all of those things are working.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Allstate has such a great opportunity with VC, right? The more you can write, the more you can make. The commission percentages on them are unbelievable, right?
Yep.
So, and if you find a great ROI on a marketing source, for example, Crosshairs, right? Like if you're able to see results from that, why not? Why not just pull down on it, right? So
totally.
That's really cool to hear. And from like our perspective, these 3 categories aren't mutually exclusive, right? You'll probably float between them. You'll probably find yourself between them. But it was the best way for us to think about how we could help set benchmarks and just kind of share with agents what other people with similar mindsets are doing. So, with that being said, I'm happy to run through a couple of these numbers. Again, some considerations. There's no correct persona, right? Your goals might align with different personas at different points. And Lucas, you mentioned you would love to just reinvest everything and go for growth, but like life happens, right? So when we meet with clients, again, we try to understand all of this and help you build out the budget and forecast to help you achieve those goals based on these agent personas. But I mean, like if we talk about extreme growth agent here, right? They may not be profitable on a month-to-month basis, as we mentioned. It may be chasing a bonus. Maybe they're okay with breaking even. And that's one thing I didn't ask you guys is, when you say growth, that's great, but like, what's the ultimate end goal? Are you trying to exit? Are you trying to ride it out, like, and till you retire, or pass it along to kids potentially? What's the end goal for you guys?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just getting started. I enjoy I enjoy doing this. I
Yeah.
enjoy the team portion, the growth, the ability to have, the flexibility, take care of my family. I mean, there's so many good things about it.
Yeah.
You know, my kids are still pretty young, so, there's always the thought of, passing it down at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even probably in the next 10-year goal is just growth.
Yep.
It's
Awesome.
really, I don't really have a plan after that point.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, plan A is plan B, right? I don't know how that
Yeah.
saying goes, something like that. Yeah, I mean, no plan B. Like that's how you make plan A work.
Burn the
Yep.
boats.
That's right.
Yep.
So, and I'm in the same situation. I mean, I look at it as like Lucas said, I stinking love what we do. Like it is, the more I do it, the longer I do it, I feel like the more I love doing it. Which is a blessing, right? Like not everyone really, really loves the work they get to do.
Yep.
So that part of it's cool. And I look at it as, my mindset coming into the agency side of it, there's so much focus on book value and, what that exit looks like, whether that be selling the book off or passing it down to kids. We don't have kids, so that part of it's not in the picture for us. And I've always kind of had the mindset of, if you do this right and you make this make sense for 10, 15, 20, 30, however long you do it,
Mm-hmm.
you can make this investment successful where your exit strategy doesn't matter. Like that's been kind of my mindset is, you can't control book valuation because there's so many different variables that change and that the company has control over.
Yeah.
So how do I make this thing work for me to where at the end, whatever that looks like that's just the cherry on top, right? So, but I'm in it for the long haul. Yeah, I envision myself, 10, 20 years more of running with this thing.
And that's awesome, right? Because someone maximizing for, I don't know, book value in the next 2 years might have a different idea of what they want out of their financials to try and maximize their book value than, one of you guys who is in it for 20 plus years and wants to see that growth now, isn't as concerned with EBITDA or anything like that, to really get your growth going. So just to kind of bring it back here again, right? Like just some high level key metrics, something that we've seen from these extreme growth agents who are prioritizing growth at all costs, right? And profitability anywhere between -10 and 5%. Employee expenses, you got to hire a lot of folks, over 60% of revenue. And then marketing expenses as a percentage of revenue over 15%. So it makes sense, right? Like the more that you spend on marketing, the more leads you should get, the more producers that you need to hire to close those leads. So again, not rocket science or anything, but this is something that we see pretty consistently with folks who are looking to really step on the gas and go. The one caution that we do make with extreme growth agents is just watch your balance sheet, watch your cash, right? Like cash is the lifeblood of your business. And so it's great to be this extreme growth mindset, but then you need to know when your cash reserves are running out if you're on a negative basis month to month, right? So that's the only caution that we have. And that's where we come in, is we work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are very enthusiastic, go get 'em mentality. And that's what you need as an entrepreneur. And CFOs or controllers, whatever you want to call them, often get a bad rap because they're the bean counters who are trying to, rein people in, right? But our goal is to keep your business alive for the long haul. So kind of being the yin to the yang of growth, go, making sure that we do it responsibly. And there's nothing wrong with losing money on a month-to-month basis if there's a plan at the end of the day, right? Where we see people get into trouble is, well, we'll just make it back somehow. That's not the right approach in our mind. Maybe it works, maybe you get lucky, but our idea would be, hey, let's have a plan, let's execute on the plan and make sure that you are successful, do have light at the end of that tunnel and get you back on track.
Yep. I think that kind of is a good kind of moving us into the kind of the next section we wanted to chat about, with you mentioning a lot of agency owners, you're entrepreneurs that you're people, right? Like you've never necessarily run a business. You don't understand all of the back end numbers like a CFO would. You have a section of like breaking down metrics. So like if an agent doesn't understand even like where do I start? What are the KPIs or the metrics I should even be tracking as a starting point? Run us through kind of what you guys focus on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are going to be high level, like a high level chart of accounts. We get a lot more detailed and granular, but if you're an agent starting out, or if you're, a newer agent that maybe doesn't have the background in finance or the background in business ownership, like there's a few key components that we would recommend that you take a look at. So here's just an example chart of accounts that I'll share with you folks. And again, it's not overly complex, but we recommend breaking it out by new revenue and renewal revenue, right? So you can see what's coming in every month. Your renewal revenue is kind of your base. And then your new revenue is what we think of as the cherry on top, right? That can fluctuate. You have a down month, whatever it is. So break it out. We don't see a lot, or excuse me, we see oftentimes when agents come to us, they just look at revenue in one bucket. It's not broken out. And we'd really encourage you to break it out by new revenue, renewal revenue, and other revenue, which is likely your bonus, or maybe you have a brokered book of business. So there could be four: a bonus, brokered book, renewal revenue, and new revenue. But at the very least, break out new and renewal on the revenue side. When it comes to expenses, your main expenses are really going to be your employee expenses, and they're going to be your marketing expenses. There are some other expenses, right? Like building expenses or travel if you're going to conferences, but on a recurring basis, your payroll and your marketing expenses are going to be the biggest ones. Business vehicle, if you have it, business development, if you're sponsoring little league teams or something like that. So these are good categories to have, but at the end of the day, this is a very basic kind of general ledger chart of accounts that we would encourage insurance agencies to have at the very least. And that way too, you can just get a sense of, hey, this is where I'm spending money on, I don't know, internet leads or direct mail. These are my employee expenses. This is my rent. It's just a good way to keep track of it all.
And with these numbers, I guess, like just to kind of dive in, like kind of another layer down, like, is there a specific purpose, or like what are you looking at from a new to a renewal revenue side of things? Like, does that tell a story? Is that something you're specifically kind of painting as a certain picture, or giving specific strategy based on what those numbers are?
It's a really good question. And again, I would say that I'm going to give the typical business answer, right? It depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on where you are in your career. If you're like in this example, right? Almost half of the total revenue, maybe like 43%, 42% or so, is going to be new revenue. To me, that's a sign that you're growing and doing something really well, right? But also from a risk perspective, what happens if a couple producers quit? Or what happens if the marketing that you're using changes and isn't as effective? Again, going back to your cash on hand, do you have enough cash on hand? So if this new revenue drops by 10%, 20% next month, can you still make payroll? Can you still afford to invest in the marketing that you're doing? So when we think about what is this telling us, like the renewal revenue is pretty safe unless Allstate changes something, right? Then it might go up or down a percentage point. But with the new revenue, it's the greatest opportunity, but it could be an area of risk. You look at it, right? So same thing with the bonus. We've seen people plan all year for the bonus, and then something happens November, December, where they either don't qualify or they don't get the bonus that they want. So what's the contingency plan for that? Are you okay if that doesn't happen, right? So talking about bonuses, talking about VC, always think about, okay, don't go buy the boat with your first big bonus, right? Like, let's keep the money in the business. You can buy the boat in 5 years. You'll have tons of money, but let's create a war chest there, so that you can weather some stormy days, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something, especially with newer agents, that we see is they get really excited about their first big six-figure bonus or whatever it is, right? Or they start making all this money with VC and then spending it right away. Well,
Mhm.
let's take a look. Let's actually project out what we could do if we save that for a couple months. But then what's the ROI if you spend it on a great marketing source, right? You hire more people. So it's this balance between having enough cash on hand to sustain, call it 3 to 6 months probably
Yep.
of your safety net,
Yep.
versus not leaving money on the table because you want to grow quickly and you found something that works. So it's a really delicate balance. It really, again, goes back to people's risk tolerance. So that's why we want to have this communication with our agents to understand their risk tolerance, what their goals are, and having a plan. The biggest thing is just have a plan. If you have a plan, you can stick to it. If you don't, you're kind of just being swayed in the wind wherever you go.
Yep. Real quick, real life example of that. My second year, we had a really good 2017, my first year having the agency. And you think, okay, this is normal, right? Like we got this cool bonus, like, the money's always going to come in. 2018, we had another really good year. And at that point, it's like, okay, this is how it's always going to be.
Yep.
I got a phone call August of 2019, after I had already gotten my 2018 bonus. And at this time, I'm just under a $2 million book. Got a phone call from the corporation last week of August that a previous employee had connected with my EFS and they terminated a life case, and that got charged back, and that put me below my bonus qualifier. And in October, the company said, hey, that $70,000 bonus you got, we need it all back. And as a $1.8 million book, second year, third year into this, I was like, oh crap, I don't have that money. And
Yeah.
so we went October, November, December without getting a paycheck. They just basically auto deducted it from my commission. And we got like half of our paycheck from January, and then February we were back on track. And so like that stuff happens, right? Like if you don't have, like you said, build that war chest. I didn't have the war chest, and that was like a phase where we were like working our tail off just to keep the lights on. But that's real to me now. So it makes total sense. Like things can happen.
Things can absolutely happen. I mean, it's tough, right? Things change year to year. Just having the war chest and having a peace of mind is kind of invaluable to some agents. Other agents don't care, right? So it again goes back to your risk tolerance, goes back to the plan. What's the saying? Not having a plan is planning to fail. So if you're okay and you're okay with that risk, then great, let's go for it. But if you're not, then if that happened, some people might have lost it. Then like some people might not have been able to persevere through that and have the mental strength. Totally. So how'd you manage that out of curiosity?
I don't honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. Like it just was like, okay, this is what it is. Like we just got to get through it. And I don't think it was till after we made it through it. I mean, I wasn't really spending money on marketing. I didn't have a big team. Thankfully, I didn't let anybody go through it either. We relied on my wife's income and just got everything super tight and ran lean. And looking back, it's like, you know what, that probably should have sank us. But I think it's one of those things where you just, you kind of blindly go. Like there's no plan B, right? Like we got to just figure it out. So
oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's really cool.
So then once we have these KPIs, I know this is like really, again, a cool, serendipitous moment where I saw that you guys just released a benchmarking tool. So if you don't mind, I'd love for you to kind of intro the benchmarking tool and then kind of give us some kind of insight into how you take these KPIs, how you use that to benchmark, and then like what's the value and the purpose of doing that as a whole?
100%. So what we can do here, we created this benchmark tool just based on, this is specific for all state agents, by the way. So all of our all state agents, we congregated the data, split it up into 4 different categories: 0 to 5 million, 5 to 10 million, 10 to 20 million, 20 million plus in premium, right? So you at least are in the ballpark of folks that are close to you. And this is a free tool that anyone can use. I can share it with you guys afterwards so you can send it out to everyone. But
That would be awesome.
for sure. And what we found is whether it's through certain agent groups or talking to people at conferences, the transparency, what you guys are doing with this type of webinar or podcast, right, is very valuable. People like to know what other folks are doing. It can be really isolating being an agent, especially one that doesn't have friends that are also agents. So we thought, how could we help? How could we let people benchmark themselves against other folks that are doing what they're doing in a similar spot, right? So I'll share this here. What we'll do today is we can just take these expenses and take this and put it into the benchmarking tool so we can see how it would benchmark against our other folks. So this is, I believe, about an $8 million book. So we would be in the established agency piece right here, $5 to $10 million, right? So we can come in here. What's the annual revenue? We've got 1312. So we'll put it in 1312. Net profit was 300,571. And the margin on that, I believe, is 22%, give or take. Marketing expenses annualized would be 247. And your annual employee expenses, 494.
Anatole, I know every agent, pays themselves different ways, and there's so many different corporate structures for doing this. In general, do you see, this employee expense, is this less the agent, or is this usually with the agent? What do you see in some of these?
That's a really good question, Lucas. So employee expenses are only what folks W-2'd. So I would say 95% of our agents are an S corporation. So agents are paying themselves an owner's salary, and then that would be included in employee expenses. But any distributions that you're taking on top of that would not be included in this. So that would be, if you're saying $300,000 in profit here, you may pay yourself $100,000 in owner's salary, a reasonable salary for running a $8 million book of business. And that would be in the salary, the W-2 salary would be included in employee expenses, but any distributions that you're taking would not be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So if you look at this, the benchmark here would be elite performer, right? So across the $5 to $10 million book, your revenue is 53% above the industry benchmark here. So for a $5 to $10 million book, the average is $859K. Profit margins right kind of on the average, 2 points above, which is great. Net profit is much higher than the industry benchmark. And then if you look at marketing expenses and employee expenses, both are higher, but that's likely due to the fact that the agency's revenue is higher and the profitability is higher, right? So if you look at that, you can quickly benchmark yourself. It gives you key insights and recommendations as well. So kudos on the excellent cost management from the profitability standpoint. And so you can come in here and plug in your numbers and check out how you're performing against other folks in the same size as you. You could even, if you're trying to forecast out, right, go back to, let's see if I can start a new comparison. You can even look at, hey, if I want to be a $20 million agency, you talked about like growing like let's just put in some random numbers here. We're going to get a terrible performance if we just do this. But so okay.
Growth opportunity. I like it.
Yeah, I think, the people who built this tried not to be too negative. But if you look at it, right, like a 20 million plus agent, they're doing about 3.4 in revenue, almost $1 million in net profit. So how am I going to reverse engineer? And you'll notice too, the profit margin is higher as you get bigger. I think a lot of that has to do with efficiencies of scale once you get to a certain size. But if you're trying to build a forecast and trying to build a path forward, this can be helpful for you to understand, okay, at 20 million bucks, this should be my $20 million in premium, excuse me, this should be my revenue. This is what I'm going to plan to spend on employee expenses, marketing expenses, potentially, what I'm expecting for net profit. And yeah, this is going to tell you there's a revenue growth opportunity because we put in one. But it can be helpful that way as well to just take a look and understand where you are today against your current benchmarks. And then in the future, what should you be planning for as you entertain that growth?
That's super cool. So this reminds me, you may not be familiar with this, Anatole, but I know Lucas for sure will be. The what if tools that FSLs used to always like paint the beautiful picture as you're recruiting new agents of like, here's an Excel sheet with lipstick that was like, let's just go ahead and type some stuff in on like, if you sell this much, here's how much you're going to make. Right. And it was a what if tool off of like, I mean, really like just make crap up. But like, I feel like it's a similar type of a thing, but off of like running as a business owner standpoint, not on a sales, commission. So it becomes a what if tool for someone like myself that says, hey, I want to get to 10, I want to get to 15 to 20 of being able to see real life numbers of what does that mean for spending on team? What does that mean for spending on marketing? And like you said, reverse engineer your growth plan. Like what a cool tool.
And I appreciate that, Ben. And Lucas, I mean, no offense when I say this, but we've seen some of those FSL what if tools, and they're very optimistic, I would say. And so the one thing that we try to do when we work with our clients is present a realistic picture and focus on the bottom line as well as top line growth. So again, when someone comes to us and they say, a newer agent says, hey, like this is the growth plan that I've put together. Okay, let's take a look at that and let's like look at some real numbers, benchmark what the one business plan says against the data, and then create a good plan, not only to grow top line growth, but also to protect the bottom line a little bit, to build up some cash reserves so that then you can double down and just go all in on hiring and marketing to really grow your business and scale. But giving you that margin maybe at first to help you build up that war chest and prevent you from entering the situation that you might have encountered, Ben, if someone didn't have a fallback plan, if someone didn't have another salary to help, that could have, as you said, bankrupted the business. And that could have been the end of your journey. So again, just taking into account everything that in a person's situation to try and help them achieve what they're looking for.
Yep. Then how do you use this tool to, like, if you're working one-on-one with an agency and here's our starting point. What do you pull from that to say, here's opportunities that I think need to be at the top of your list. And then like B, here's how we kind of plan forward from that, based off of what that tool's giving you.
Yeah. So I think it's a great tool. It's rudimentary in the sense that it doesn't take into account loans that you have on the business, any financing. It doesn't look at your office expenses, any business vehicles. So it's great. It hits on the main categories, but when we work with clients, right, like we're actually digging in. And we're looking at, so it's a person, not just like AI and software doing it, but we're looking at a whole bunch of different drivers, which I'm pulling up here now. to really dig into the business and look at the entire picture, right? So if we look here, this is the demo account here for Allstate, but we're looking at your auto book size versus your property book versus if you're doing like wind or any type of other financial products. What's your base commission rate? What's your variable comp rate? What's your variable comp goal? What's your average auto premium per item, property premium, flood, wind, et cetera, and getting really into the details so that we can see here, okay, this is all of the, we call them drivers, or you can call them inputs, whatever you want. This is your business's numbers. And then when we run a budget and forecast, they're going to reflect your specific business. So we're going to get granular. And so, I said all new and all renewal. Well, let's look at your new revenue from auto, your new revenue from property. We're going to break down your commission statements from Allstate and look at renewal revenue from auto, from property, from securities to really pinpoint, okay, this is what's going well. You may find that you're doing really well on auto and your property's falling behind, and you could make more money bundling, right? You do make more money bundling, but that's just a simple example of letting your numbers tell the story and analyzing with your CFO advisor what you're spending your money on and where it's coming from, so that if we run like a what if scenario here in a micro forecast, right? Let's say that you're going to hire someone. Let's say that you're hiring 2 people and you want to know what would happen if one turns out to be a low performer, which you'd have to hire, and fire, and one is a good performer. Let's run that scenario. Let's see how it impacts the bottom line. Let's see if they're going to be hired in, for example, May. Well, May's passed, but let's say we're going to hire them both in August. You'll see the numbers change down here. What's that going to do to your operating profit? What if you staggered them? So running all sorts of these what if scenarios with very detailed, granular budgets and forecasts is how we would work with our clients. And we would encourage, even if you're not working with us, get granular, do this in Excel. It will really help your business from the standpoint of giving you confidence to make decisions to grow your business, right? If you're on the fence and you think you can't afford something, did you actually look at it, or are you just kind of going by your gut, right? So my wife and I try to do this in our personal lives as well, right? If we're making a big decision, buying a car, buying a house, whatever it is, like, let's model it out. Let's look at it in an Excel sheet. Here's the categories that we spend on. Let's do it. So that's the way that we would work with our clients. I think that tool is a great place to start. But where we would get granular is like, okay, you're telling me you want 15% profitability, but 50% growth year over year. Let's reverse engineer into that. And here are the drivers that are going to make that happen. And how's that going to look? And here's the what ifs if you double down in marketing investment, double down in hiring, whatever it might be.
2 quick questions. Well, I guess one quick question, one quick comment. Question on that toggle, like where you're saying if you're going to hire someone and they turn out to be a low performer, how do you define that?
You're going to hate my answer again. It depends, right? So what we would ask the agent, when do you want to see ROI from them? Is it month 3? Okay. Is it month 4? Some agents are more lenient. They give 6 months. Some agents are like, I know whether or not they're going to make it after 2 months because XYZ, right? They write X amount of items and they're doing this correctly. Others say they want to take longer. So we're going to define it by whatever way the agent wants it defined. We have some benchmarks, right? If you're not breaking even by about month 3 or 4, you should probably get rid of that person, unless there's extenuating circumstances. But again, we want to understand from the agency owner, some people are very particular that they need to hit X by 2 months. Others will give more time.
And I guess as you explain that, it kind of takes me back to those personas, right? So it's, for the agent that is in profit first, mode.
Yep.
I have, especially if you're in that mode and you're looking at hiring, or if you're in need of hiring, like that person better generate additional revenue. Otherwise you're going against like the
Yeah.
whole phase that your agency's in. So
Yep.
that's not us, which that's why I think why I naturally just, it doesn't even cross my mind that
Yeah.
the right decision for someone might be totally what I would look at as like, that makes no sense to me.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
it's, yeah, sorry to walk you into an impossible question to answer.
No, but it's a good one because we get that, we get that often where it's like folks expect us to have all the answers and we don't want that. We want to work with clients because again, what fits for one person may not fit for the other. And so we see our job is to try and uncover what you as the agency owner really want and then execute on that. And so that's the way that we want to approach it.
Man, that's, and the comment like that I don't know if that's a tool or if that's just like your guys' dashboard, but that's awesome. Like that, I don't know. I love numbers, like, so like I dive into that stuff as much as I can just through Dash and on my own stuff. But like, I look at that and I just think, man, for any agents that are out there that don't, maybe you're not good at numbers, maybe you don't enjoy numbers. What a valuable tool to be able to partner with someone like Club Capital. And I mean, there's so much there that can really drive all of your decisions in your business.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. It's sometimes it's interesting the way that folks view numbers as a necessary evil, right? But you can actually turn them into a huge value add for your business and a growth tool.
Yeah.
But to your point earlier, there's some people who really love the numbers. There's some people who just hate them and procrastinate them. And so, we love working with both. And we're going to adjust the way that we work based on who you are as an agent too. So, I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier where, you have to be wearing multiple hats.
Yep.
And you're trying to wear that growth hat and the CFO hat at the same time. And one is the bean counter hat, I guess. Right. So one's the yin and one's the yang, and you're trying to do that all as one person. And I think that's a big challenge for most of us.
It's, I'm a parent now. My son is going to turn 2 in September, and I've got one on the way also due in September. And it's funny. Thank you very much. But, Lucas, you might be able to relate to this. There's moments where, mom is the fun one and dad's the one saying no. And there's other moments where dad is saying yes and mom's saying no. And to just have that balance between, I think about it in terms of business ownership too. Like, agents don't always have an executive team around them. They don't always have someone to keep them in check and to balance them out, right? You may, on the other side, be too conservative and your CFO could say, hey, look, like you're doing something really great with your marketing. You should double down on that because your ROI on it is insane. And some people just may be too conservative. So it's kind of that balancing act, that fractional CFO that can really help.
This is cool. I guess kind of pivoting to like actionable like takeaways, like I guess speaking directly to agents that are watching this that don't have someone in your role or a partner that's running this, and maybe agents that don't have the budget, right, to hire and outsource that. Like, what are some actionable takeaways and things that you would say, hey, here's step 1, 2, and 3 that you should start doing now, and here's how you use that and why?
Step 1, knowing your numbers, right? Even if you don't outsource it, if you can just know your numbers, whether you're doing it yourself in QuickBooks or Excel, know them. It doesn't have to be as granular, right? We shared earlier the kind of 5 to 7 categories that at least you could start with. Just know them, because if you don't know them, it's hard to plan. And the second thing I would say is create a plan of where you want to be and try to, and the third piece to that, right, is holding yourself accountable, or maybe having someone hold yourself accountable, right? If, Lucas, if you and Ben are good buddies and you feel comfortable like sharing goals, like we've seen people before, agents have other friends who are agents hold them accountable. And you share your goals with them and you can hold yourself accountable. So if you're able to know your numbers, which involves doing the bookkeeping typically, or having someone do it for you, and then have a plan and then hold yourself accountable, I think that's a really good starting point for folks who may not be doing anything today. And, at least that's a pretty low cost lift, right? Of maybe a couple hours a month. But it should be a good place for you to kick off kind of the financial side of things.
Cool. If you don't mind, take a few minutes and talk about, Club Capital as a whole. And like, if I am reaching out to you to kind of start that partnership, what does that look like? What are the steps? What all does that entail?
Yeah, for sure. First, we want to have a conversation. You're probably going to be talking with me. So hopefully I didn't turn you off by, this podcast here. But you'd first have a conversation. We'd get to know each other. You'd go through the onboarding process and we would start working together. We can do everything from just the bookkeeping, through bookkeeping and CFO advisory, through bookkeeping, CFO advisory, and tax planning, tax filing, tax prep, all of that good stuff. So really, we're flexible. Everything for us starts with the bookkeeping, because that, again, step one, knowing your numbers, that's our philosophy, and then going from there to add-on services. So feel free to reach out to me personally. I can share my email, share a scheduling link to my calendar. If you're interested, feel free to schedule some time and we'll chat and see if it's a good fit.
Cool. From a time commitment, I think that's one of the things where I think about it, and I'm sure other agents are thinking about it too. It's like, there's so many like platforms and softwares and tools, and it's like,
Yep.
Our company already gives us enough to kind of make you drown in it. But then you think about all of the outside ones that you layer on top of that.
Yeah.
What does that look like from a time commitment, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly? What does that look like from an agent?
At the very least, we're going to need you to send some documents to us on a monthly basis. So regardless if we're just doing the books, I would say it's a 30 to 45 minute time commitment per month, just to communicate, to get the documents needed and to get everything set up. Then it's 30-minute call once every quarter. The more, I would say, intense fractional CFO side, it's at least an hour a month of the meeting plus the documents, plus going back and forth on email with questions. So it's probably closer to 2 to 3 hours per month. And we'd encourage that, right? If you don't want to spend 2 hours, 3 hours going over it, probably not a good fit for the CFO package. So anywhere between like an hour and 3 hours per month, I would say. And we do everything for you, right? So we're creating the budget, we're creating the forecast, the tool that you saw, that's all created. You would just meet with us to review it, and you could log in whenever you want and check it out.
That's cool.
Yeah. What kind of documents are you, is it, because if you're doing the bookkeeping or, an agent's not using QuickBooks, so they're sending you bank statements, things like that. Is that kind of what you're looking for each month, or what does that look like?
So bank accounts, credit cards, we can typically link up with. There's really two things that we're going to need. One, the commission statement from Allstate, because Allstate will not let us link up with that. And then two would be payroll. There's a few payroll providers that we can link up with, but if you're not using one of those two, then we would need you to send that document as well. And then, of course,
can you share who those two are?
Yeah, it's Gusto and ADP.
Pretty common ones.
Yeah, I would say we see those a lot. We see some Paychecks, we see some other ones, but Gusto and ADP are the two that we'll integrate with. Or integrate.
Gusto, ADP.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. You guys are doing my job for me. But yeah, so, and then, there might be some back and forth if there's some, what we call ask the client transactions where, you spend some on Amazon and we don't know whether that's employee relations. We don't know whether that's, for example, marketing stuff that you're buying. So we would send you an email and you just clarify real quick.
Man, I think this has been awesome. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, guys.
One more question, if you don't mind me kind of drilling you home to share more info for other agents to consider you guys. From a cost perspective, is it like you have the different like 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10, 15, 20 plus? Is the cost structure the same regardless of the size, or do you guys have anything that varies that into it?
It definitely varies. On the tax side, it's all the same, right? But from a bookkeeping perspective, it's based on expenses per month. So the total dollar value of expenses per month. And there's 4 different tiers that pretty much correlate with the 0 to 5, 5 to 10,
Mhm.
10 to
I think
20.
that's cool because that's, like I can think back to those first few years where it's like, I don't have money to spend on marketing, let alone,
Yeah.
third-party services.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty darn cool that you guys kind of take that into account and make it approachable regardless of the phase you're in.
We try. There's a floor, right? We can't do our jobs for less than the
Right.
floor, but we try to make it accessible. Because especially a lot of folks, even on the tax side, I mean, you guys might have known what you were doing when you got into business ownership, but we see a lot of agents that, just are uncertain on the tax side, uncertain on the bookkeeping side. And so we see it as a big opportunity to help folks who are just starting out, get their feet under them from a business ownership standpoint, and help them get set up with good processes on that side. So we try to make it affordable, and we try to make it accessible to all agents.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Anything else that you have?
No, just kind of drowning over here and thinking about all the things that I should be doing.
That's good. That's a
Yeah.
good conversation then. And
Yeah, selfishly, Ben and I eat this up. I mean, we're doing this to help agents, but selfishly, we also, we get so much from these conversations. So we hope it helps other people as well, as much as it helps us.
For sure.
Well,
For sure.
Again, really appreciate the kind words. Really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really fun getting to chat. Thank you guys for sharing your stories too. Really cool to hear.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the job is just getting to chat with business owners and agents and understand, their journey, where they've come from. Like it's crazy. Like the stories I've heard are just crazy. And so it's really fun for me to get to chat with y'all, and really honored that you'd have me on.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yep.
And where can people find you? Like, I guess two parts to that, like just for, website, if they wanted to reach out to you directly, but
Yep.
also like, I know we kind of really got to know you down at Texas Forum. Like what events will you be at throughout the remainder of the year?
Yeah. So we will be at Mega, when coming up. I won't be. It's like a week after my son's supposed to be born. So unfortunately, I won't be able to make it. I'll be at Mega. I'm not sure if we have any other on the calendar for the rest of the year. I'd have to check, but I know that's the next All-State one coming up. And then, you just go to club.capital. You can Google that. It'll bring you right to our page, or my first name, Anatole, at club.capital, is my email address. So that'll go directly to me. And again, I'll send through, my contact information after this, so I can share it with everybody.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we get anything we do on social that has tags this, we'll make sure to get your contact info. So
Cool.
yeah, we've got some of that, but anything direct you want to send over, we'll make sure to, link it to this podcast. And of course, we'll promote it a lot on our social media as well.
Totally. Yeah. I think just to recap that for all the agents that are watching, like, I think this was such a valuable conversation with Anatole and with Club Capital. So consider them as a partner. If not, those key takeaways, know your numbers, create a plan, and find some way to establish accountability, right? And reach out to us. We're always, open to connect and to share. And that's the whole purpose of this. All we're doing with One More Round is trying to create conversations that accelerate growth. So not only for us, but for all the other agents around the country. So stay tuned. Follow us, like us, share it. We want to help you grow. So we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us for One More Round. And we'll be back next month having another conversation with one of the stage speakers, another agent from the Texas Leaders Forum. So check back.
Cool.
Cheers.
Who are you guys? Cheers, man. Who are you guys interviewing?
Cheers. Thank you.